Hi, my name's Keegan, and I'm the host of Engineers in Automation. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Dan Allford. He's the founder of Arc Specialties. We're going to talk a little bit about employee retention and why his is so great. We're going to talk about what makes his welding and automation company so unique. And then we're also going to talk about the most important thing in running a business. Now, let's go talk automation. Welcome to episode 22. I'm here with Dan Alford. He's the founder of Arc Specialties. Dan, welcome to today's show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, and let's just go ahead and jump right into it now. Can you give everybody just a little bit of a background about yourself?
I got lucky way back in the 70s. I started playing with computers at the same time I was building things. And so, right when I get out of school, the combination of being a computer geek that can weld and machine and such was perfect for the new field of robotics. And probably wouldn't be qualified if I came out with that today. But, like I said, back in the late 70s, it was a good combination. And so, this is all I've ever done is industrial automation. In '83, I started the company Arc Specialties in my garage. We're doing some interesting stuff way back then, but nowadays we're building machines that are operating in 33 countries. We got locations in 2 states, and I've got around 55 or so very talented engineers and craftspeople that are helping me build robots.
Wow, congratulations. And then can I ask, what was the catalyst that kind of kicked off you starting this company 30 years ago?
I'm going to give my dad credit. He was an entrepreneur, and so he showed me the way. Uh, Interesting fellow. He did everything from teach English in college to jump out of airplanes with a bazooka into France during World War II. But uh, when I was a kid, he was an electrician, and so I remember he taught me how to wire a three-way switch, and I thought it was fascinating. and and he also showed me that you could start a business. So when I had the opportunity to start doing some work in my garage, I did, and I believe I was making $7 an hour during the day, but over $100 an hour at night. So I think that was a motivation. It was monetary.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then currently now with the business, what are your main focus areas? Like your main clientele? Is it automotive, more industrial, defense, food and bev? Can you explain that a little bit?
Ah, it depends, and so you got to be versatile, and that's what we've learned over all these years is you have to be in a lot of different industries because everything is cyclical, but fortunately, not everything goes in the same cycle. So here we are down in Houston, which is the center of the oil field still, and so when oil prices are good as they are now. Uh, I would say over half of our work is in the oil field, but that's not always the case. During COVID, oil went down, and we went and built cars.
Oh, wow. Wow, so very, very diversified. Um, I did want to ask, what kind of makes Arc Specialties different from what you would consider your competitors?
I've got a bad business model. That's what makes us different. We end up taking the hard jobs, and most robot integrators, particularly ones doing welding, they specialize in gas metal arc welding or MIG welding, and we don't seem to get many of those jobs. What we get are the tough ones like plasma and laser and electroslag and robotic subarc, things like that. And so uh, it's kind of interesting. We like the hard jobs and we take them all over the world. It's almost a challenge for us to do the ones that have less value added, a simple MIG based system. So, but we're getting better at both. So, what makes us good is we'll take on the hard stuff. We got a laboratory, and so when people ask us, how to do something that's not in the textbook, we have a way to explore it and look for options.
Yeah, and we kind of talked briefly too. You're talking about when you're talking these non-standard welding processes. Can you elaborate on some of the unique projects that you guys have worked on? I know when we spoke earlier, I mean, some of the stuff I've been a weld engineer now for almost 20 years that I'd never even seen or heard of. Could you explain some of those unique projects that you guys get the opportunity to work on?
Well, first you need to be patient. You've only been in it 20 years, so there's plenty of time. Uh, for example, I do a lot of plasma, and plasma is a great process for automation. We do a lot of gas tungsten arc welding also, but the problem with TIG or gas tungsten arc is the tungsten is exposed, which means it's easily contaminated, and so that makes robotic TIG kind of hard to do. Too easy to contaminate the tungsten. Plus, you have to feed wiring. Okay, so one of the big advantages of plasma is we have a protected tungsten and we can feed the filler materials in powder form. That does a lot of good things for us. For example, it allows us to weld in any direction. When you're TIG welding with a robot, you're pretty much limited to welding directions based upon how the wire feeds into the puddle. And that could either be the front or the back, leading or lagging, depending on whether you're doing hot wire, which is another conversation. But with plasma, with powder feed, you're no longer limited to that. So you can go any direction you like. That helps quite a bit. Plus, we're able to deposit metals which aren't available in a wire form. There's a lot of stuff that you can't make into a wire, but almost everything can be made into a powder. And we can also do fun things where we do composite overlays where we'll run two different materials blended together. So that and the fact with a plasma torch, you get a collimated arc. So with a TIG torch, as you pull away from the torch, your arc spot changes, the diameter changes. So your current density changes. And that's not the case with plasma. So from a robotics point of view, plasma is a great process. It's easily automated.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds interesting. Like I said, I've personally never even seen it out in the field. So, I did want to mention also, you have all these crazy unique applications. What is the one like most difficult one that you can imagine that you remember over these last few decades that you just go, man, that project was so difficult. And can you explain then how you got through it?
Oh, well, they've all got challenges, and everything has a challenge in it. But I remember working in Samara, Russia one time, and it was plasma overlay. We're putting down a material which is 60 Rockwell C. So that's very, very hard. And we're having to do it without preheat, which, as a welding engineer, that's kind of a bad idea, but no preheat, no cracking, and minimal dilution. And so there I was working alone in Samara and finally got good welds. And I was having to use Russian powder, which I didn't like either. And I was running Russian shielding gas, which I didn't like. But in spite of that, we made some good welds. And I was kind of proud of myself. We had the hardness was right, the weld geometry was right, and it was defect free. I thought I was home free. I was going to go back to the U.S. And the metallurgist took a sample cross section to put it on the microscope and said, no, the microstructura is not good. So we played with how to change the microstructure of a plasma weld and ended up satisfying them. But for a while there, I was wondering if I was ever going to get to go home.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a unique one. And then when you are doing these different applications that literally no one else is doing, when you get to a roadblock, what do you do to overcome some of these things? I mean, you're obviously leaning on past experiences, but there may not be a manual that you can look to for this stuff. What do you guys and your team do in this kind of situations?
Well, I've got a great team, and I'm old, so I've got a lot of experience, and that comes back to something that I've read about recently that I think is fascinating. And when you're working in an environment where you don't have feedback, or the feedback's hard to understand, or the feedback's delayed, you can't rely on prior experience in exactly the same field. What you're having to do is rely on intuition, but better than that is analogous thinking. And analogous thinking is where you take a solution from a seemingly different problem and then reapply it because the problem looks similar to you. And so we rely on analogous thinking quite a bit, because the first time you try to make titanium bulletproof is the first time it's ever going to happen. So you can't lean on experience. You need to start thinking about things you've done in the past that might be similar.
Yeah, well, that's great insight. And I did also want to talk about some of your guys' marketing strategies. You have a very great high content YouTube channel that produces lots of good information. what was kind of the driver there that you looked at and said, no one else is really sharing these types of videos. Maybe we should be the ones to do it. What kind of pushed your button to look into that side of the marketing of the business?
I like people. I like sharing information. I mean, we routinely let people tour here. I feel like we're all in this together. And everybody gets better by sharing info. So no, we're not very secretive at all. The only time we have to keep secrets is if there's an NDA in place with a client. But otherwise, I'm delighted to share what we've learned with students or even competitors.
Yeah. And I've been following you for a while and you do share a lot of great content, and that's kind of how we initially met and started speaking. So it's wonderful what you're doing. Keep it up. It's great. I learned something I feel like almost every week just uh following you and watching some of the videos. I did also want to commend you on such a great website that you've built. I've built several myself. Your website, looking over it, is probably the best in the industry that I've seen so far. Can you just kind of honestly walk me through what, why is yours so much better than everybody else's? That's what I really want to know. What made you say, hey guys, we need to get this working really well? I mean, you've got instructional videos, you've got, your how-tos, you've got your blog posts, you got what you guys do, you got your team members on there. I mean, it's really good. So congratulations there. But why did you want to make yours the best?
Well, I can't take any credit for it. I'll take all the blame. Originally, when we started out, we crammed too much stuff in there, and it was hard to navigate. And we had a lot of good information, but how could you dig it out? And so I give Johnny Tyler, he's my media guy, all the credit for the website. He didn't delete any information, but he did organize it in such a way that you can possibly find something useful now. So I give Johnny all the credit. He's doing a great job on it.
Yeah. And then does he help you? I know you kind of run some podcast stuff as well. Does he help you with that too?
Oh yeah, no, he built the studio. He runs the back corner. We're trying to get him on the podcast, and so hopefully he'll see this one. That'll motivate him, but because he has a fascinating history too. We hired him, and I didn't hire him; somebody else did. And when I met him, I said, "Hey, you good at videos?" He says, "No." I said, "Get good quick, or you're fired." And he rose the equation, and now he's doing literally everything from our trade shows on. And so if there's any headhunters out there, they'll probably be looking for him now, but that's okay. We try to keep him happy.
Well, I hope he doesn't go anywhere. Like I said, you guys' stuff looks great. I did want to talk a little bit about employee tenure. It seems like you've got a lot of people that stay for a while. What's your secret, do you think, on keeping your employees happy and, staying working with you?
I wish it was one thing, but it's not. What it is everything. And if you want to boil it down to one comment, it's do unto others as you have them do unto you, and treat people the way you want to be treated. But no, we've got people here that a bunch of 20-year folks, over half of them have 10 years or more. But then we're hiring youngsters all the time also. But I wish there was one trick, and there isn't. So we have a stock plan. We have a 401k plan. We're taking 80 people to Mexico for an island vacation this summer, and each person is different. So you can't determine whether they're here for the benefits, the salary, or the trip to Mexico. So we just do it all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, whatever you're doing, it seems to be working. I did want to ask you a little bit about growth. You're obviously growing still, which is great to see as a company that's been around for several decades now. You do have a new location. Do you have more in the future, do you think? Anything you can talk about there?
Right now, we don't need another building. We're operating out of one, two, three, four buildings in two states. So uh, now we don't need to grow in that regard. So our growth is hiring programmers, hiring project managers right now, and those are the two that are difficult to find. But fortunately, we're getting big enough now, and our reputation is good enough that we're attracting people to Arc. So that's how we're going to grow. It's just project managers are the key to this business. You got to have somebody that takes turnkey responsibility for the whole job, even if it's the Russian gas or the Russian powder or the microspatuta, you have to take responsibility for everything because in robotics, you either get an A plus or an F.
Yeah.
It either runs or it collects dust.
Yeah, that's a great analogy there. I didn't think of it, but yeah, you're right. Your customers either love you or they're they're gonna hate you. Um, I also like asking people in your position, goals. Do you guys do goal setting? How does that work for your company? What's your thoughts there? I know some people love them, some people hate them. Do you have any targets for the team for this year?
I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and so my goals are to exceed expectations and capitalize on opportunities and have fun in the process. But I also realize that's more of an entrepreneurial spirit. A couple of my vice presidents have said they'd like something a bit more structured. So ironically, at our last company meeting, I solicited everybody's suggestions for a 1 year and a 5 year plan, and they're still coming in. So I think that whole shoot from the hip entrepreneurial attitude will only get you so far, and at some point you need to become a little more structured. And I guess we're growing up and doing that.
Yeah, and I like that idea too. Just, give a 1 year plan and then where do we see ourselves in 5 years? That sometimes seems to make a little bit more sense than spending 2 or 3 days, everyone writing out their own individual things and then, seeing if it gets approved on the way up to the top. So not a bad strategy. I also love to ask as a business owner, what's your biggest mistake that you've had?
We've got a good one. You got to understand, I'm a tech guy, right? And so what I've been studying the most over the last 20 or so years is finance and economics because I find it interesting. But in the beginning, I was woefully deficient in these areas. And so I think it's probably the third year or so, we had money left over at the end of the year. And we were tickled. So we're just a handful of people at the time. But I gave out bonuses, which was the right thing to do. But I also quit asking for progress payments, which was naive and stupid. And so we went along fat and happy all the way through January, February or so. But then that's when I came to realize that progress payments are what were the reason that we were doing well. And it sounds silly now in retrospect, and I'm sure people are shaking their heads, but I had to learn it the hard way. And so it took a couple of months, 3 months, and we were in a cash crunch, and life was miserable. And so there's what we did was Gary Ewing, one of my earliest employees, he and I went out and we just started finishing jobs so we could get payments because the alternative was bankruptcy. And I didn't really want to do that. But I was convinced that I was going to dig out of this hole and I was going to go get a real job. Well, lo and behold, after we dug out of the hole, it was fun again. And so Gary and I kept working together. He retired a couple of years ago after 25 years with me. But the moral of the story is if it's working, don't change it. And I had a good equation. It was working well, and then I changed it, and I suffered in the process.
Yep, yep. Good note there. I do want to ask too, now that you've, like I said, several decades here, what's the most important thing then in running a business? Is that still if it's running good, don't change it, or is there any other advice you'd give
I
there?
don't know. I think you need to question everything every day. Otherwise, you'll become obsolete. And you in my business, it's easy to become technically obsolete. So you do need to question things. Or should we still be using the same controller? Should we switch, to fiber optics? So question everything. But so what's the most important thing? People. That's all there is in the world. I've got 100,000 square feet of buildings. We got a bunch of really cool machine tools and robots and welding machines and stuff, but they all grind to a halt without people. So that comes back to creating a place that people want to work, so they'll stay with me, and that's what we've done.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely have. You are a welding guru, I'd say. So I do want to ask, what is your favorite welding process?
Hmm. For For manual welding, I still do a bunch of it. I was building some parts last weekend. I still like to stick weld, oddly enough. I
Really?
guess
Okay.
yeah, it's a cool process because it's so versatile, and I've got a little generator and a little welder. So I still do a lot of stick welding myself. As far as automation, though, I really like plasma because it is such a cool process. You're able to add heat without metal, metal without heat. We're able to put down materials that are composites. We have welded molybdenum. I had to look it up on the periodic table. We've welded pure tungsten. I don't think you're supposed to be able to do that. Welded pure chromium. We're running composites where we will take, for example, titanium powder and mix it with titanium diboride, or aluminum powder and mix it with aluminum oxide. So, I mean, everything we've run through a plasma torch has worked. And then it's got three different gas supplies, so you could do some fun stuff with gas. We start adding hydrogen to the inert gases, and
Yep.
so I think plasma is just the most versatile process on the planet. People are afraid of it because they're not familiar with it, but once they try it, they like it because you have so much control over all of your variables.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm trying to think of, I don't know if I've done any, now that I think about it. I know
Go
for a
visit.
fact not on a robot, maybe on a gantry system in the past. But Dan, I do want to ask before we wrap up here, how can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of Arc Specialties?
We've got a nice website, like I said, www.arcspecialties.com, ARCSPECIALTIES. We are plural.com. And then I'm just Dan at Arc Specialties. We're got a LinkedIn page, post a lot of stuff on that. And I love to talk to people. Like I said, all there is in the world is people. And I like, when we make these posts, I actually like to get some comments back. That's how we learn something. I learn more when we're wrong than when we're right.
Yep. Yep. And I'll put a link to all those in the description of this as well. So, Dan, I really appreciate you sitting down with me today and walking through your business. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like, comment, share, and don't forget to subscribe. And we hope that you join us here next time on Engineers and Automation. Thank you.
Thank you.